When we speak about stress, most people imagine it as something that must be eliminated. But in the Shaolin tradition, we understand stress differently. Stress is not an enemy, it is a messenger. Just as a gong vibrates when struck, stress shows us where our life is being struck, where there is imbalance, where we must listen. The modern world constantly pulls your attention outward: emails, deadlines, endless responsibilities. The more you scatter your energy, the heavier stress feels. But in Shaolin training, the opposite is true. We learn to gather the mind, unify the breath, and return to the present moment. In that state, stress does not overwhelm, it transforms into focus. Imagine a bow and arrow. The more you pull the string back, the more tension there is. But without tension, the arrow cannot fly. Stress works the same way. If you learn to hold it with awareness, it becomes power. If you collapse under it, it becomes suffering. The Shaolin path offers three tools: the body, the breath, and the mind. Through movement we release stagnation from the body. Through breathing we calm the storm inside. Through awareness we learn to observe stress rather than drown in it. Stress cannot survive in the space of clear awareness, so do not aim for a life without stress. Aim instead for mastery of your inner world. When stress comes, welcome it as an opportunity to sharpen your discipline, to deepen your practice, and to remind you of balance. Then stress is no longer a burden, it becomes your teacher. When most people think of stress, the first impulse is rejection. Stress is seen as a shadow that follows us, a constant reminder of pressure, responsibility, and things we wish to avoid. We call it a problem, we resist it, and in resisting we give it even greater weight. But from the Shaolin perspective, this understanding is incomplete. Stress by its very nature is a signal. It is like the sound of a bell ringing in the distance. The bell does not ring without cause. It vibrates because something has struck it. Stress arises in the same way. It comes into your awareness only when some part of your inner or outer world has been struck. To ignore this signal, or to attempt to silence it without listening, is like covering your ears while the bell keeps ringing. You may not hear it anymore, but its vibrations still move through the air. Stress is not the enemy, it is the messenger calling for your attention. Think of your body as a landscape. The rivers of energy flow, the winds of breath move, the mountains of muscle and bone rise and fall. Stress is like a storm appearing in this landscape. If you only focus on the thunder and lightning, you will see chaos and danger. But if you learn to look deeper, you will realize that storms bring rain, and rain nourishes the earth. Without storms, the land becomes barren. In the same way, stress carries vital information. It tells you, here is where the imbalance lies. Here is where you are pushing too hard, neglecting too much, or losing alignment with your true path. If we misinterpret this storm as purely destructive, we suffer unnecessarily. But if we understand its message, we can redirect its energy, turning what feels like chaos into nourishment for growth. In Shaolin practice, we train our bodies to listen. When you hold a horse stance, the legs begin to shake, the muscles burn, and the mind starts to whisper, "This is stress, stop now." If you quit, you silence the messenger without learning the lesson. But if you breathe into the discomfort, if you remain still and attentive, the shaking transforms into stability, the burning into strength. The stress was not there to punish you, it was there to show you where you had not yet built resilience. Life functions in the same way. The stress you feel in your relationships, in your work, or in your own mind is not trying to harm you. It is pointing toward the areas where your balance is weak, where you must learn, grow, and realign. Many people today chase a life free of stress, imagining that peace means the absence of challenge. But in reality, such a life is empty. A bow that is never drawn produces no arrow. A muscle that is never challenged becomes weak. A mind that is never tested becomes fragile. Stress is the tension that draws the bowstring back. It is the weight that strengthens the muscle. It is the riddle that sharpens the mind. To call it an enemy is to misunderstand its nature. Stress has always been a teacher, waiting for you to listen. If you treat it as a messenger rather than a foe, you begin to unlock its wisdom. Every time stress visits you, instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "What is this trying to tell me?" In this way, the same experience that once caused suffering now becomes the beginning of insight, resilience, and mastery. When a person feels stressed, often it is not because of the present moment itself, but because the mind is stretched in many directions at once. One part of the mind is replaying what has already happened, unable to let go of the past. Another part is projecting into the future, imagining scenarios, calculating outcomes, fearing possibilities that may never arrive. And another part is entangled in the tasks, notifications, and expectations of daily life. This constant scattering of attention is like carrying many stones in a backpack. A single stone may not feel heavy, but when you continue to add more and more, eventually the weight becomes unbearable. This is why people describe stress as heaviness. It is not the external situation alone, it is the fragmentation of the mind that creates the burden. In Shaolin training, the body teaches us what the mind often forgets. Heaviness disappears when attention is unified. Imagine practicing a form where each movement flows into the next. If the mind is distracted, thinking about yesterday's mistake or tomorrow's challenge, the body stumbles, the rhythm breaks, the energy is lost. But when attention is gathered fully into the present step, the present strike, the present breath, suddenly there is ease. The weight vanishes not because the movement is less demanding, but because the mind is no longer divided. Stress behaves in the same way. If you bring your awareness fully into the now, the pressure of carrying 1,000 possibilities dissolves into the clarity of carrying only one, this moment. Consider water flowing down a mountain. If it spreads into countless small streams, the force is weak, easily absorbed into the ground, unable to move anything of significance. But if the streams converge into a single channel, the water becomes powerful, capable of carving stone. Human attention is the same. Scattered, it weakens us. United, it becomes strength. When stress arises, most people attempt to handle 10 different thoughts at once, like trying to juggle in a storm. The Shaolin perspective is to drop the juggling and hold only one ball, the present moment. Breathing, walking, eating, working. If done with undivided attention, each action becomes light, simple, and complete. What was once stress becomes flow, because the mind is no longer fractured. Modern life trains people to live outside of themselves. Notifications pull the eyes to the phone, deadlines pull the mind to the future, regrets pull the heart to the past. In this way, the individual becomes like a candle burning at both ends, quickly consumed, always flickering, never steady. To return to the present moment is to protect the flame. Gathering the mind is not about rejecting responsibility, but about aligning attention. When you are with a task, be fully with it. When you are with a person, be fully present with them. When you are with your breath, feel it without interference. This is the Shaolin way, to move from fragmentation to integration, from scattered heaviness to unified clarity. Stress cannot survive where the mind is whole. Stress is often misunderstood because people focus only on its pressure, never on its potential. Yet in the Shaolin way of seeing, stress is much like the tension of a bowstring. Without tension, the bow is simply a piece of wood and string, powerless and incomplete. It is the drawing back of the string, the careful cultivation of pressure, that allows the arrow to fly. In the same way, the challenges and demands of life create tension within us. If we resist blindly, the tension feels unbearable, but if we hold it with awareness, that same tension transforms into energy directed toward purposeful action. Stress is not automatically destructive. It becomes destructive only when we lack the ability to channel it. Think of an archer preparing to release an arrow. If the bowstring is drawn too tightly, without balance, it may snap, injuring the archer. If it is drawn too loosely, the arrow falls weakly to the ground, never reaching its mark. The mastery lies in finding the right degree of tension, the precise balance between force and control. Stress functions in the same way. Too much pressure, carried unconsciously, can break the spirit. Too little, and life becomes stagnant, directionless, without growth. But when a person learns to balance stress, acknowledging its presence, shaping it with discipline, and aiming it toward meaningful goals, stress becomes a source of propulsion, not paralysis. It is not the existence of stress that matters, but how you relate to it. In Shaolin training, every stance, every exercise embodies this principle. When you hold your body in stillness, the muscles vibrate with strain. At first, this tension feels like an enemy. The body cries out, "Too much, release me." But if you remain steady, breathing deeply, something shifts. The trembling of weakness transforms into the solidity of strength. The same tension that once seemed unbearable becomes the foundation of endurance. Life offers similar tests. The stress of responsibility, of deadlines, of obstacles, is like the shaking legs in horse stance. If you collapse, the lesson is lost. If you remain steady with awareness, the very tension becomes the training ground that expands your capacity. Imagine again the arrow in flight. The power of its journey comes not from the arrow itself, but from the tension released by the bowstring. In the same way, the achievements of your life, whether they are acts of compassion, creativity, or discipline, are often born from the very stress you once wished to avoid. Without tension, there is no launch. Without resistance, there is no growth. Stress, therefore, is not the curse many believe it to be. It is raw energy, waiting to be directed. If you collapse under its weight, it breaks you. If you meet it with awareness, it becomes your ally, carrying you farther than you could have imagined. The bowstring does not exist to punish the archer. It exists to give flight to the arrow. Stress does not appear to harm you. It appears to teach you how to master your energy. When stress arises, most people try to fight it only with the mind. They attempt to think their way out, analyzing the problem, replaying scenarios, calculating outcomes. But the more the mind churns, the heavier the stress becomes. From the Shaolin perspective, this approach is incomplete. Stress does not live only in the mind. It leaves its mark on the body and disturbs the rhythm of the breath. The true way to transform stress is to engage all three dimensions: body, breath, and mind. This is what we call the Shaolin triad. Each part influences the other, like three strings playing in harmony. If one string is out of tune, the whole instrument sounds disharmonious. But if body, breath, and mind are aligned, even the weight of stress can transform into balance and strength. The first entry point is the body. Stress creates stagnation, shoulders tighten, the jaw clenches, the stomach knots, left unchecked. These tensions become like stones carried inside. That is why Shaolin training begins with movement. When you practice forms, stretch or hold postures, the body opens, and stagnant energy begins to flow again. It is like unclogging a river so water can run freely. A body that moves with awareness cannot remain a prison for stress. Even simple movements, walking slowly, stretching with intention, standing tall, begin to dissolve the knots that stress ties within you. Movement is not an escape. It is a way to release the body from the grip of unconscious tension, making space for clarity to return. The second entry point is the breath. Stress shortens and quickens breathing. It traps the breath high in the chest, as though the body is preparing for danger that does not exist. When the breath is shallow, the mind cannot settle. It is like trying to calm a storm while the winds keep rising. In Shaolin practice, we learn to reverse this process by breathing deeply into the belly, lengthening the exhale, and allowing rhythm to return. The storm begins to quiet. Breath is the bridge between the body and the mind. You cannot command the heart to slow down by thought alone, but you can influence it through breathing. In this way, every conscious breath is like a hand placed gently on the mind, reminding it to soften, reminding it to come home. Stress loses its intensity the moment the breath regains its depth. The final entry point is the mind itself, but approached differently from how most people attempt. Instead of thinking harder, the Shaolin approach is to observe. Awareness means stepping back from the whirlpool of thoughts and becoming the witness of the storm. In this state, stress is no longer a master, but an object of observation. You see the thought patterns racing, you notice the emotions rising, yet you do not drown in them. This shift in perspective transforms stress immediately. Like clouds passing across the sky, you recognize that the storm is temporary, not your true nature. When body is relaxed through movement, when breath flows steadily, the mind finds it easier to stand as observer. This is the power of the triad. Each part supports the others, creating a complete path for transforming stress. Body releases tension, breath calms the storm, and mind illuminates the lesson hidden within the challenge. Many people dream of a life without stress, as though peace can only exist in the absence of pressure. They imagine that if they could remove every obstacle, silence every demand, and eliminate every challenge, then finally they would be free. But the Shaolin perspective teaches something different. Freedom does not come from escaping stress, but from mastering it. Stress will always appear, just as waves always return to the shore. To wish for a life without stress is like wishing for an ocean without waves. It is impossible. Instead, we train ourselves to surf upon the waves, to ride them with balance and awareness, so that what once threatened to drown us now becomes the very rhythm that carries us forward. Think of a student in Shaolin training. Each day, they face tasks that push them to their limits, stances held until the legs tremble, forms repeated until the body aches, meditations that challenge the restless mind. If the student complains saying, "Why is this stress placed upon me?" they miss the essence of the practice. The strain is not punishment, it is preparation. Without it, the student would never grow. Muscles strengthen only when stressed. Focus sharpens only when tested. Endurance develops only when pushed. Stress, then, is not an obstacle to training. It is the very medium through which transformation occurs. Life mirrors this process. Every difficulty you encounter is not an accident, but an invitation to cultivate strength, balance, and wisdom. To master stress requires a change of relationship. Instead of saying, "This is against me," you begin to ask, "What is this teaching me?" In this shift, stress becomes a teacher. When it tightens your chest, perhaps it is teaching you to breathe more deeply. When it overwhelms your schedule, perhaps it is teaching you to prioritize what is essential. When it strains your relationships, perhaps it is teaching you to communicate with greater patience and compassion. Each appearance of stress carries a hidden lesson, and the one who learns to listen grows stronger. The enemy of growth is not stress itself, but the refusal to see its message. Mastery is not the elimination of pressure, but the recognition that within pressure lies the possibility of transformation. Imagine a blade of steel. Left untouched, it remains dull and fragile, but when it is hammered, folded and exposed to the fire, it becomes a sword, sharp, resilient, and strong. Stress is the hammer and the fire in the forge of your life. It shapes you, tempers you, prepares you for challenges greater than the ones you face today. To reject stress is to remain unshaped, untested, and unready. To embrace stress with awareness is to step into the forge willingly, knowing that each strike of pressure is refining you. In this way, stress ceases to be something to fear or resent. It becomes your teacher, sharpening your discipline, deepening your wisdom, and reminding you always that strength is not built in the absence of struggle, but in the very heart of it. So when we speak of stress, let us no longer see it as an intruder to be feared, but as a companion that points us back to balance. Stress reminds us that we are alive, that we are engaged, that something within us still seeks growth. It is not about rejecting the weight of life, but about learning to carry it with steadiness, as a warrior carries his staff, not as a burden, but as an extension of himself. In the Shaolin way, peace is not the absence of storms, but the ability to walk through them without losing your center. Stress will come again and again in different shapes and at unexpected times. Each time you will be given a choice: collapse under its weight, or use it as a stepping stone to rise high. Train your body so that it becomes strong enough to release what it holds. Train your breath so that it can calm the inner winds. Train your mind so that it remains still even when the world around you is in motion. And above all, remember, stress is not here to break you, it is here to teach you how unbreakable you already are.